Hey guys, welcome to Monday Night Novak News. We've got a really special segment for you tonight. We've got a bit of a different camera set up here, so I'm not quite sure where to look. And we've got headphones in. It's all happening here. We're all wired up. So, and there's good reason why we've got headphones in. We've got a really special guest with us here tonight, Mark. We're talking about co-living.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yes, excited for tonight.
Co-living is, we're going to introduce Matt Carolan in a second, but just hold on. Oh, Matt's on the line at the moment. Just hold on a second, Matty. What we want to talk about, guys, about co-living is we think as real estate agents, we do a lot in the rental market space.
Yep.
We do a lot in the sales market, commercial, off the plan, everything. So we've got 50 strong agents that operate in all different areas of the market. And what we see is big patterns and big waves come in the market. Often people will see that when they're coming out of the bell curve of that market, they see it. So let's say if we use kindergartens as an example. If I was talking to you about the massive amount of kindergartens that was going to hit the marketplace 20 years ago, you'd think I was a box head. But then when you look at it from 5 years ago or 8 years ago, it just bloody exploded.
Yeah.
Now, when you then morph across to boarding houses, and if we started talking about that, people would have just shook their heads and no. So it really is a pleasure to introduce Matt Carolan tonight, who's come on, because this is a guy who's a bit of the godfather, in my world anyway, of the co-living.
Big shoes to fill, Matt.
Big shoes to fill, Matty. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you, Mark and Lisa?
Yeah, we're good. So guys, if you're wondering why we've got these old barbaric headphones in our ear, it's because obviously we've got to hear Matt that way. And when Matt starts talking, if you guys can just give us a thumbs up as to whether or not you can actually hear him when he starts talking, that'd be awesome, because he's got some super interesting info for everybody. Excited
it's awesome.
Tonight. Yeah.
It's bloody awesome.
Yep.
So, Matty, can you just tell us a little bit about your heritage, where you've come from, and let's talk about where you're going in a second. But what environment have you come from to be able to do stuff like this?
Yeah, so the last 6 to 7 years, I've been involved in the rollout of a large purpose-built student accommodation platform in Australia. We concentrated primarily on building facilities, designing and building facilities in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Brisbane. And that rollout's been very successful. Obviously those properties are located near university campuses, but we've been developing various types of accommodation that suit students, mainly first year, second year and some third year students attending various Australian universities. And that's been an amazing experience. The sector's becoming more established in that space, and that market 10 years ago didn't exist. The off-campus purpose-built student accommodation market.
Isn't that
primarily up to that point? It was on-campus colleges and operated properties owned by universities.
Yeah.
So that's where I sort of come from. We've developed over 7,000 beds that are now in operation.
Yep.
And we're using that knowledge and background now to morph that particular type of property sector usage into co-living or a version built to rent.
So, Matt, just to again accentuate how bloody big the market was and how rapid that went through like a fireball through the industry. You guys, the company that you partnered with and found properties for and built you went pretty much from the beginning all the way to the end with these 7,000 rooms. How big did that market get? Because I know the company you worked for were doing 7,000 rooms, but together with your major competitors, how many apartments, or should I say beds, did you drop into the grid within a 10-year period? I think it was something like 30,000 or 50,000, or how big's that number?
I think in markets, especially Melbourne, you're seeing now in the order of 25,000 new beds having come into the market or coming into the market over that period, so over the last 7 to 8 years, and then say for the next 4 to 5 years ahead from now, including the pipeline that's committed. So in places like Melbourne, where you've got 130,000 students living in the city, you've had in the order of that many beds, 25,000 beds or so, coming into the market. In areas of Sydney where it's been harder to develop these beds around Sydney University, UTS, Uni of New South Wales, given land prices, the pipeline and then the beds that have come to market is a much lower figure.
Yep.
But that is still very much in its sort of development phase, and there are still beds being committed today. So in Sydney, you're talking in the order of sort of 10,000 beds, and then interstate in Brisbane, there's been a lot of development as well.
That's to go.
That's happened. So yeah.
Okay.
So you're talking tens of thousands of beds nationally.
So, and when I am framing this up for co-living, by the way, but where we're going with this is, so, you know, it is around the figure of 40 to 50,000 beds. Now, ladies and gentlemen who are watching, every time you drop a bed, or one of these providers drops a bed into the market, one, it doesn't go anywhere. You don't sell these things and they disappear into the ether. This is rental accommodation for the next 20 to 30 years. It doesn't go away. Once they build a building of 700 beds, it doesn't go away. It's permanently in the rental grid. And just one more thing, Lise.
Yeah.
When we're talking, just qualifying what we're talking about, when we're talking one bed, that's potentially a one-bedroom apartment. When we're talking two beds, that's potentially a two-bedroom apartment that you're knocking out of Ultimo. So if you're in Ultimo, or if you're in a student accommodation area, and one of these providers have come into your area and they've dropped in 400 beds into your area, that's about, you know, potentially 200 to 400 apartments, more competition than if I've got an old 40, 50-year-old one or two better, I'm going to be directly competing against these guys that are in student accommodation.
You know what's interesting as well, Matt? There's a lot of people that are watching that don't know. My background is actually in private education. So long before my days of real estate, we our family ran the largest private training organisation in the country. And, you know, we had some 3,500 students that would come and study with us. And it was called Australasian College of Natural Therapies. It still exists to this day. We're the largest training provider of health and beauty education. And these students were coming from overseas, Matt, and we had nowhere to put them. So I totally get this kind of accommodation. You know, these students would come from everywhere. They'd come from Eastern Europe, they'd come from Asia. And we had nowhere to put them. We'd be looking around the streets of Surrey Hills, which is where our college was, for somewhere to house these students. So where were they staying prior to you guys doing this? Where were they going? I mean, you guys are, you know, you're sleeping a lot of people. So where were they resting their heads before then?
Well, sure. In Sydney, say, for instance, you know, the traditional place for these students to go was in, you know, terrace housing, or share housing, effectively, where they rent as a group a 3 or 4 bedroom terrace, or they go into some of the more modern strata unit developments, and they might share a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, and in some cases, you know, share one bedroom amongst two or more people. So we've actually displaced a lot of those properties, as in the properties that were being used for that purpose are now. You know, those students are coming into purpose-built student accommodation.
Yeah.
So a lot of the residential properties in and around Sydney University have been freed up from that type of use and have become available for the broader market.
Right.
So
it's brought
the younger students.
It's introduced affordability into the market for the typical Australian as well.
Yeah, it has. So. And, you know, one of the compelling things to get onto is that the rental model in this type of accommodation is a gross rental, and it includes all of the, on costs, or what you could call outgoings and services and utilities, and that's in the rent. So that's why it becomes very compelling, and the properties are often managed on site as well.
So Matt, we're really getting into and I know we all love to talk about Uber in terms of taxis. We all love to talk about Uber food. We love Uber Eats. We love to talk about Deliveroo, the convenience. But this is isolating it to student accommodation, which is your absolute expertise the last 10 years. We haven't even covered where you're going, which is more explosive and exciting for
Yeah.
me, but I am framing it up. It's really just made life super convenient for the prospective tenant, where they don't have to connect the internet, stuff that it's already there.
It's all done
They
for
don't have
them.
to even worry
Yeah.
about. Now, just an exciting thing I want to touch on is also the concept of food. You, when you left off, Matt, in student accommodation, you guys started delivering over 2,000 meals a day over 2,000 meals a day to one of your facilities.
A week. Yeah.
A week.
Yeah,
that was exciting,
Yeah.
and it again underpins that convenience that you're talking about and I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what, obviously in this particular sector where you're providing a real estate solution for people to live, but a big part of that real estate solution or place to live is the services that are provided as well, that are included in the rent. That becomes very compelling.
Yeah.
And then, as the property you're referring to in Haymarket, where we've got 665 kids living that are, mainly studying at either UTS, Sydney or New South Wales, they're being fed 7 days a week, included in the rent. And that's gone incredibly well.
And it wasn't jailhouse food, mate. This is 5-star food that you guys were delivering. I remember you telling me the quality of.
Well, listen, I might move in there. Have you got a spare bed? Something
Yeah. There are 25 staff in the commercial kitchen, and we, it was set up to cook all different cuisines. So because a lot of the kids living in student accommodation for all different cultural backgrounds.
Exactly.
So we had to cater for their needs. So it's cooking obviously Asian food, Indian food, all of the Western European foods as well on the menu.
Yeah, that's quite a feat. And the great thing is that these guys are paying up front, aren't they? So you're not doing, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not doing weekly rents. I think they're paying up front, is it by the month?
Yeah, they're paying obviously a bond for security purposes, and then they're paying in advance, yes, and the rent's generally a month in advance, and it's direct debited as well. So, the underwrite's very strong.
All right. So I think we've framed up well. One, you're an extremely qualified man from where you've come from and where you're going into. Two, there is a very, very strong market for the style of student accommodation and environment you come out of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but no operators have had a problem renting out their student accommodation in any of the precincts today. It seems quite buoyant.
I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, it does. There have been some markets that have probably and possibly been regarded as having a little bit of oversupply, particular pockets where, the barrier to entry for some of the newer developers coming in has been fairly low. So there are pockets in Australia where it would be regarded that, student accommodation is probably supplied enough in that area for the moment. But generally, no, it's been very strong.
Super strong. So now, without further ado, let's talk about co-living.
Sure.
So co-living, guys.
Let's explain what that is. I think, Mark. It's important that we explain what it is.
Let's explain what it is. Matt, you're probably the best equipped.
So co-living, very broad term. It's one of I suppose the segments of the broader market for build to rent. So build to rent being the generic term given to properties that are held in one line, not strataed, generally not strataed, although can be, and they're managed as a whole asset in one line. And there are many forms of build to rent, co-living being one of them. Co-living really just means that the occupants of the building are sharing as a group of people a significant portion of the building, either in the general commercial of the communal spaces around the building. So things like, foyers, lounges, meeting rooms, gyms, cinemas. Or they could even be sharing some of their private space, which is within an apartment, within the building. So if there's for instance, a 3-bedroom apartment within the building, each bedroom might be privately secured or rented by a particular person or a couple.
Yeah.
But that apartment overall may be shared by 3 individuals or 3 couples behind their
Wow.
front entry door. So yeah. So in other words, you're sharing something. It just depends. It depends what you're sharing. But co-living is really a way of coexisting within a property.
Yeah.
And it's generally where the property is managed by an operator that looks after the whole building, and quite often in the larger facilities that management actually happens on site rather than off site.
And so can I ask you this, what sort of rent are they paying? Like say someone's sharing they're in a co-living environment and they're renting in a 3-bedroom apartment. What sort of rent are they expecting to pay?
And why would I want to rent a co-living apartment when I...
Well, let's first see what the rent looks like, and then I think that might answer the question, I'm gathering.
So it depends where it is, Lisa.
Yeah.
But the general rule of thumb is you're paying as a price point for rent similar to what you would pay in the residential market for your portion of that apartment, or if you've got, for instance, a studio, you're paying a similar price point to what would exist around you. It's just that roughly 15 to 18% of the rent that you're paying includes a whole lot of things that would not be included in normal residential rent.
Okay. Such as?
In the case of institutional scale co-living, things like gymnasiums, cinemas, you've got access to co-working spaces, libraries, communal kitchens that you can book to host dinner parties. You would have a rooftop garden potentially. You'd have ground floor or internal gardens that you can use. All those sorts of spaces are available in the building to the occupants, but the use of those is included in the rent.
Wow. So this kind of living has never existed before, or is it a concept that you guys have come up with, or is it a concept that exists overseas? I mean, it's phenomenal. I've never heard of anything like it.
No, it exists, and it's existed in different forms for a long, long time.
Okay.
Probably in the case of, some people looking at history for thousands of years, but in the way it's being designed now and thought of is different, and the markets globally that have started in the space ahead of Australia are places like Manhattan in New York, Amsterdam, London in the UK, places like that, and it's also started in places like Japan on scale, Hong Kong. So there are other places in the world where it's emerging, but it's still very, very much in its infancy.
So, Matt, who's your target market?
I was just going to say, who's the demographic? Yeah,
you copying my notes.
We don't have any notes.
So, who is your target market for, prospective tenants? What do they look like? Are they very hairy and noisy and look like truck drivers, or?
I bet it's young professionals. If I could have a guess, I reckon it's young professionals.
Brazilians.
I think you're pretty right there in what we're targeting. 21 to 35-year-olds is a common industry term.
Brazilians, fantastic.
Sorry, say it again. We're being silly.
That's right. 21 to 35-year-olds to be very technical about it, but what we're talking about are people that want to live in particular locations that are very, compelling locations. Areas where, for instance, there's a strong workforce, and people want to live in particular precincts where it suits their lifestyle. Yeah. But they might be either priced out of that particular location in the normal resi market in that location. Yeah. Or the vacancies in the area are so low. In other words, the stock available is so tight that there just isn't the stock available for people to take it up. So
and it just
that's where the focus lies.
So Matt, can I ask you, are you going to have like a normal
that's my question.
Normal lease
That was
terms?
my question. That was my question. You're copying my notes.
So we manage as an agency, and it's a very rare thing, but we do manage boarding houses, and that's a really awful word for young professionals accommodation. So it's really like a very fancy apartment. You've got studios and one-bedders, little kitchenettes, really nice. basic but really, really nice accommodation. And we can rent those out as short term. So you can do by the week, by the month, by the year. Is this sort of accommodations quite similar, or have you got to be taking out longer leases?
Generally, this market's going to be targeting 12-month leases and probably 6 months if needed.
Yep.
But given one of the big objectives is to try and create a community where people in the building are living together and they get to know each other and creating a community. One of the big objectives is to have people stay longer term so that you create that community rather than a service department type model or a hotel type model where you've got people that are very transient and coming and going.
So is it
one of the big... Say that again?
Is it community first driven? Is it convenience first driven?
Yeah.
What would you, in terms of priority in this co-living situation, where would you put the benefit, like if you had to benefit
community. Yeah, community is very important, and it ranks number one. You've got to create the right community.
Right.
Yeah.
The convenience comes with the obviously the inclusions and the scale. And if you develop co-living on the scale, it allows you to incorporate all of these services and facilities that you would not get in a smaller property. So that's one of the big advantages of the scale model. Yeah.
And are you paying weekly, or fortnightly, or how are you paying? And also, I'm keen to know what the bond is. I just in comparison to
similar to a residential lease.
Yeah.
The occupants are still consumers. They're still protected by all the consumer laws, so they have to be treated exactly the same way. So there's obviously security bond held. To encourage people to look after the property that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
And rents are generally paid either fortnightly or monthly.
Okay.
So that's generally how it cycles from a cash flow point of view.
Yeah.
And they're signing depending on what state the property's in, they're signing a rooming agreement or a version of a residential lease for the term.
Okay, and then termination, because I know that varies again just from managing boarding houses here, varies with boarding houses, and termination is very different when you're on actually a fixed term lease. So can you so with boarding houses, I don't know if a lot of people know this, the termination differs, right? To what it would if you're actually in a fixed term lease. What's the situation there with termination? You've got a bad tenant in there and you need to get them out.
Yeah, so it's quite a good question. It's interesting. Given the scale co-living model, a student accommodation model is primarily managed on site, so you've got a group of customer service staff on site. It's generally handled very much face-to-face between the staff and the occupants. So you rarely get a situation where the communication has dropped off and then it's back to phone or email. So it's actually very easily managed and always face to face. So the sort of notice either way that's required is always easily handled at the property level.
Yeah.
All right. And so Matt, just before we sign off, I'm pretty excited, and I think just to encapsulate everything that we're talking about, you're doing a massive co-living approved residence in Canberra. And just to encapsulate exactly the benefits of co-living, can you share a little bit about that? I'm not sure if you can or you can't, but can you share, if you can, can you share a little bit about that and the exciting points about this particular development that you're doing? Because I think a lot of people are going to mirror your co-living straight into Sydney, straight into Melbourne and different areas. Can you tell us about some of those exciting points or those lollies for prospective tenants in co-living that are going to be coming into you?
Yeah, so look, we think Canberra is a very strong market from a rental perspective. Vacancies closing at the end of last year and in early this year under 1%. Rents are very strong in Canberra, relevant to I suppose by comparison to Sydney and Melbourne. Canberra's got the highest average wage. Probably people don't know that this, but necessarily the Canberra population has the highest average wage in the country. So the disposable income to go to renting is stronger.
Yeah.
It's a very strong employment zone, obviously, and
so you've got a lot of young
in the city
down there.
Yeah, and there are a lot of grad programs. There's a lot of young people that come out of university either in Canberra or from interstate that end up getting their first job in Canberra. And rental accommodation in Canberra, in particular parts of Canberra, especially in the city and Braddon, are very tight and very expensive. So, when you go into a market like Canberra, you design the property for the market.
Yeah.
And this particular property, we've got 270 student beds that will be primarily targeted towards students who are studying at ANU.
Yep.
And we've got about a separate community within the facility for 250 co-living clients.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
So over 500 rooms. And targeted
so
you're
catering to two markets here: co-living and student accommodation in the one. I won't use the word compound. It sounds awful.
It's a very, very new concept for us. That is for sure. I'm feeling like it's the first in the country, maybe, Matt.
Of its scale, it is. It's the first co-living at this scale building designed the way it is in Australia.
And are you opening up in Sydney anytime soon?
I think we will be. I think we'll be in Sydney. The business is obviously based in Sydney, and we're already pursuing opportunities in Sydney at the moment.
Awesome.
And the lollies. Tell me about the lollies. You've got the cinemas. I think
that's cool.
The cinemas. You guys can spend $250,000 on a cinema without even thinking about it. So the style of the cinema is top notch. I think you mentioned to me you're going to be doing like a co-work environment for those people that are they can even share a little bit.
Yeah, so the thinking is that if people are living in the co-living facility and they run their own business and for instance or they have a job but they work from home quite often, we've got a community co-working area on the ground floor that allows people to not have to work in their apartment. They can come downstairs, have breakfast. We've got a restaurant there and a cafe. You can mingle with people within the building and work in a
quality.
Yeah, it is. And it's very funky, and that particular co-working area and the use of it's within the rent as well. So you can work during the day in a different environment, but actually within the same facility where you live.
Mate, very, very exciting.
Sounds much like our life. We might need one here and do one sometime soon.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome.
You're a legend. We're really excited for you. We're excited for co-living. Guys, keep an eye out on this space. It is going to put pressure on the rental market, the general rental market.
Yeah.
So I think my advice to landlords is keep your property sexy, keep your kitchens and bathrooms modern.
Yeah.
So if you're competing, you're a bit avant-garde. You're ready to go. It doesn't leave room for sloppiness in the market.
There's no doubt. There's a niche for it. There is no doubt about it.
Yep.
Without a doubt there is, especially the way everyone's lives are these days, right? Everyone's living such busy lives. It really all just comes down to the convenience factor.
Big time. Matt Carolan, thank you very much for talking about co-living.
Thanks, Matt.
No problem.
We'll take
no
care.
Problem. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye. Where's the crowd coming from? Where?
Guys,
have a good night. See you later.
See you guys.